To an extent. We're working through that chalk.
I'll slow you.
Okay, yeah, just clear, slow, I'll try to adjust. No, not really.
Wait, who's AFF and who's NEG?
That's a good
Or
one.
you have
Yeah, Menlo-Atherton's there.
Oh, flip that side.
yeah, or in the auditorium.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, anyone already now? Let's start with the plan. The United States federal government should substantially increase its investment in hypersonic missile technology. Again, the United States federal government should substantially increase its investment in hypersonic missile technology. Advantage one is the European Union. Advantage 18 says that the U.S. hypersonic missile technology is not super developed right now. This is really important because Russia and China are leading the way in hypersonic missile technology globally. That's Macross 18, the USA, and the USA and Europe are not up to speed on their hypersonic missile technology, which is really key because hypersonic missile technologies are going to be the next big weapons revolution. If the United States and the EU don't have hypersonic missile technology in their arsenals, they're going to that probably leads to the destruction of deterrence between various rivals like Russia versus the entirety of the European Union. Russia is aggressive now. You can see just look at the past few years, they've invaded Crimea, funding proxy wars in Ukraine, and actually invaded the Republic of Georgia's home soil. That the problem is that the EU is emboldened right now because they've been able to get away with past offenses. So hypersonic missile technology is going to be really key hypersonic missile technology is going to be really important to stopping Russian aggression through deterrence. Only the USA checks Russia because the European Union's military and the United States military are both interlinked, especially in the defense of the European soil. The European Union is heavily dependent on NATO, in which America is a really huge player, makes up the majority of that organization's defense budget and actual armed forces. None of the countries in the European Union have the ability to individually fund their own hypersonic missile technology projects to the point where the United States can, which is really which means that United States involvement here is really key. Hypersonic missiles incentivize first strike strategy, which means that they probably war goes up in the world of the negative, where they don't have the United States substantially increase its investment in hypersonic missile technology because countries know that they can't deter each other because one country will know, because America will know that we can't deter Russian aggression because they have hypersonic missiles. It just incentivizes first strike in other forms, just as a multiplier for wars popping up in Eastern Europe. Also, Russia being aggressive now means that is even more likely. The impact here is World War III. This is the largest impact of the rise of global nuclear war, because when Russia and America and the European Union go to war, France, Russia, America, and Britain all have nuclear missiles, which leads to a global nuclear holocaust as alliances drawing countries from all over the world, and nuclear arms are going to pop up. Nuclear arms are going to be exploded all across the planet, which leads to a nuclear holocaust, which causes extinction as the nation states collapse, nations of the world collapse, and not at first from nuclear missiles, but then also the nuclear fallout as ashes cloud out of the sky, causes nation states to collapse as the environment collapses globally. It means that the nation states collapse causes extinction, but the extinction is probably the greatest impact of the world. Let's do the second advantage.
Jesus Christ.
I can slow down a little bit.
No, you're good.
Slow down.
Advantage 2 is proliferation. There's heavy proliferation of these weapons going on right now. I already said Russia's proliferating weapons, but our KEG-18 evidence also suggests that China is also proliferating with the same hypersonic missile technologies. Lieutenant General Samuel Greaves reports that the United States reconnaissance has seen Russia and China testing hypersonic missile capabilities in their own territory, which means that they're developing these weapons now. They have them now. This is really important because our Macias. Meta-18 evidence suggests that the United States is really behind because we haven't been testing weapons to the same extent that our KEG evidence suggests China and Russia both have been. So we're behind in this race right now. And North Korea is also scenario one is North Korea. North Korea is looking for these missiles right now. That's Lieutenant General Sam agrees in 2018. Again, North Korea really wants these weapons right now because the existence of a nation state is built off of the ability to nuclear strike. Kim Jong-un knows that, so he looks for he looks for the newest technologies to be able to increase his nuclear capabilities against countries like the United States to try to check the nation state. It's really bad because China probably gives North Korea new technology. So because China, for two reasons. The first is that China and North Korea have an everlasting alliance that has lasted for decades through war with America, which probably means their alliance is extremely resilient. China knows that they can support North Korea through any sort of instability, so they give them weapons so that the North Korean nation state doesn't collapse. Also, they don't want the North Korean nation state to collapse, so they give them weapons so that the nation state is stable. Because North Korea collapse on the border of China probably leads to a really terrible instability on the Chinese border, because a nation of 25 million people collapsing it means that millions of people flow into northern China, which is and North Korea getting nuclear weapons is going to be really bad because it's, again, the impact is nuclear holocaust. Millions of people, not told billions of people are going to die across the entire planet. North Korea knows that its deterrent strategy is probably, it's first of all going to work. Let me finish this scenario, then I'll take your question. The nuclear holocaust happens inevitably because North Korea breaks down American deterrent. America doesn't have the ability to check back against North Korean nuclear capabilities. North Korea against China's hypersonic missile technologies, which means that they're able to strike America first before America does anything, which causes a nuclear holocaust in the same scenarios and in Advantage 1, yeah.
Okay, so can you explain how North Korea getting a weapons technology that is not nuclear leads to nuclear holocaust?
Oh, it is nuclear. So hypersonic missile technologies are just the way in which the payload is delivered. So when you stick a nuclear warhead onto either a hypersonic missile glider or onto a hypersonic intercontinental ballistic missile, then it's just like an upgraded weapon. Those are ways in which nuclear missile payloads are developed right now. They're just not traveling in Mach 5.
Also, conflicts can escalate.
Oh yeah, also conflicts can escalate even if there's nuclear weapons at first.
Let's do scenario 2. It's Iran. China gives weapon to Iran. That's KEG 18 evidence again. China knows that Iran probably is looking for the same weapons. China has sold tons of weapons to Iran before. The Iranians probably looking for these weapons as well to use against their enemies. That's KEG 18 again. They're very likely to use these weapons on regional enemies like Saudi Arabia and Iraq. They've gone to war with Iran before. That's just 30, 35, 40 years ago, which means that the scenario is probably very likely to occur in the near future. If Iran can get a strategic advantage over Iraq and not repeat the same blunders they made in the Iraq-Iranian war in the 80s, then it's very apt to attack them again because they're not only historical and economic rivals, but also having some based on the basis of religious grounds. Like the two countries hate each other. The war goes entirely global as Iraq and other countries in the region like Saudi Arabia, allied the United States, and Iran builds its China alliance because China sells them the hypersonic missile weapons like I have with other weapons in the past. Means that great powers are drawn in. The impact is another World War III scenario. There's 3 different scenarios isolated in the one is which is probably the greatest impact on nuclear holocaust comes first before anything else because of the collapse of the nation state as a result of nuclear explosions going off across the entire world, kills everybody, and if that just kills everybody, then nuclear fallout from ashes planting the sky to causing environmental disaster probably kills everybody else through a long and slow death. That's 2 solvency. The United States needs to develop these missiles because they destroy deterrents. Have the hypersonic missiles bypass missile defenses, which is really important because that destroys the concept of mutual assured destruction, which means that concept is totally gone from international policy. They can't be responded to because they compress reaction times by traveling way faster to speeds of Mach 10, and also hypersonic gliders change path mid-flight, so they can't be intercepted by a single missile, interceptor missile. That's a KEG 18 evidence, which means that deterrent is super destroyed. And the affirmative reestablishes deterrence by granting the United States further hypersonic missile capabilities. Which means we don't need to shoot down missile payload. We can just tell them we're going to nuke them back and reestablish the concept of mutual assured destruction. It means that there's no war in any 3 scenarios.
Okay, I'll try my best. Okay, so NEG is 1 off, but you'll probably need 4 or 5 sheets. Your computer, I guess, doesn't matter, but you guys 4 or 5 sheets. And then I'll go into case, but...
Is it just case order?
Yeah. I'll do that. This is fine. Okay. Right. Okay. Everyone ready? Start my time now. First is the framing. The first argument is that the pre-post ballot line is more important than the pre-post fiat line. Second argument is debate norms have gone too far and actually harm the groups that they are trying to help. Third is the role of the ballot. Vote for the team that best dismantles harmful debate norms. Again, that's vote for the team that best dismantles harmful debate norms. Internally, the role of the judge is first to incentivize others to run positions that affect positive change in the debate space, 2, get us further into outrounds to get a larger audience and impact, and 3, to legitimize the narrative that we need to destroy harmful debate norms. The fourth argument here is that the project comes first because we need to level the playing field before we can have a productive discussion, fiated or not. Fifth argument is in-round discussion is key because there are equity forums at these tournaments, but they fail to reach on a personal level to affect in-round norms. People only care when the ballot is at stake. 6 is the negation is a prior question to the affirmative before we can actually debate about nuclear war or any of those possibilities. We need to decide how we are going to debate them. Reasons to prefer the role of the ballot and to prefer pre-fiat is we are dismantling debate norms is significantly more important than post-fiat net benefits because net benefits disassociates identity from people and distances you from the actual real world. You cannot what? Oh yeah, net benefits and fiat in general. You cannot separate a person from their identity, especially when their identity is disenfranchised in the debate space. It is a privilege to be able to disassociate yourself and use these impacts that aren't actually realistic. Now onto the links. The first is debate truth. There's a difference between truth and debate truth. Truth in debate has to pass through so much structure and jargon to actually be legitimate. There's an essay called On Bullshit, where basically bullshit is when you no longer care whether something is true or false. You're not intentionally lying, but you wouldn't really care if you were intentionally lying. This is something that is super, super common in debate, and truth ceases to matter, and education ceases to matter because it becomes who wins and who loses, not who is telling the truth. We must decouple truth and competition and realize that upholding truth is much more important than a ballot. The difference in epistemology between the real world and debate leads to the dilution of debate of truth and exclusion. Yeah.
Why is the AFF not consistent with being true?
I'll go into that further to the link. The second link is exclusion. First, with cisnormativity and gender, it creates a fear for trans and non-binary debaters to not be able to participate in the same ways in the debate space because they have constant fear going into round that they are going to be misgendered. Although in this round it is absolutely fantastic. One of the other debaters came up to us before prep even started and asked for our pronouns. That is something that has never happened to us before, and it is incredible that that happens, but it is a rarity in the debate space. The second, under exclusion, is race. The auctioneering style of debate, which the affirmative actually definitely links into with his spreading, according to Radiolab, actually excludes people of color and low-income people because they are unable to participate the same way that rich and affluent people are. African Americans have been pushed into debate since the 1990s using donations and other means, but they still face these same problems. Personally, in our own personal experience, low-income students from the Urban Debate League around our school have been welcomed into our debate community, and the only way that they have been able to survive is they haven't been going to tournaments like NPDI. If they went to these very elitist tournaments, then they would be drowning in jargon, and they have expressed that they are decentivized to participate in debate because of those facts. The third point under here is wealth. Basically, a huge thing at NPDI is or these types of tournaments when you get to a certain point of credibility is I'm just going to throw on a sweatpants and a sweatshirt and be oh, I don't need to earn my credibility anymore. But basically the formal attire norm is it's a privilege to pretty much be able to break that because there are some people in the debate space who actually don't have that privilege and don't have that credibility. Third link is truth, false certainty. First is false certainty. The objective is basically creating drastic catastrophic impacts, something that the affirmative does in every single one of their contentions. They literally say that this tiny action that probably would first of all, investment is going to lead to nuclear war in 3 different scenarios. That is absolutely ridiculous, and being realistic creates the most education. There's also fabrication of evidence. Parliamentary debate is the only unverifiable part of debate, and in our experience, entire teams have used fabrication of evidence in order to win. It's absolutely ridiculous. The fourth link is debate is a win-loss scenario with less emphasis on actual in-round information. People are more than just a dehumanization impact, although they are treated as such, and body counts and things like that. An example of this is Lewis and Clark. They ran this fantastic revolutionary feminist critique, and then they didn't run it in the finals round because it was no longer seen as a viable strategy. That's an example of people using the win of thinking that strategy is more important than upholding morality. C is the impacts. First is devaluing debate. The first subpoint here is the value of debate is education. When debaters lie or omit truth or exaggerate to this extreme extent, they devalue debate. When truth loses its value to affect change in the debate round loses its value to affect change in the real world. Second point here is that harm from dishonesty is exponential. First of all, it's going to be seen as a viable strategy, and second of all, facts, things present. I'm sorry, I don't have enough time. I'll get to you at the end if I have time. Facts and stuff that are presented as facts, even if they're false or they don't really care that they're false, are going to be brought into other rounds because they're like seen as these like winning statistics. Third argument here is real-world arguments are accessible because they rely on real truth. Debate truth hides behind norms and structures that dilute truth and make it less accessible. The second impact is exclusion. Like debate is often like arbitrarily decided based on like race, gender, and class, and that's independent of debaters' ability to act and character. Debaters lose value, and debate loses value because we're investing personal and intellectual value into it, and it changes nothing. A third argument is the value to life. Like this is like a parallel between like real policy debate and like the policy debates that we have inside the debate space. Like the trans lifeline had like quadruple the amount of calls when like Trump was attacking trans rights and like trying to erase trans identities, and that's according to the CEO like proof that policy debate does not exist in a vacuum, and you can't say that there aren't real impacts on these people when you use them as dehumanization impact. The fourth argument, the fourth impact is diluting truth. Debate becomes like an ingrained part of us, and lying, misleading, and cheating becomes an ingrained part of us. It follows us into our everyday life. May I remind you that Ted Cruz, Brett Kavanaugh, and Richard Nixon were all former debaters, and are examples of people who lie and cheat to get what they want. Thus, the alternative. So the alternatives are basically like little things that you can do like within the debate round or before the debate round that can actually like make debate more comfortable for those who have been disincentivized. And also like a very important one is judges should fact check questionable evidence because debaters should be held to a reputable standard of evidence, and it's the judge's obligation to enforce it. It's more important to value the truth than to be entirely tabula rasa. Now onto the alternative solvency. Our solvency exists through the judges. The difference between this tournament and others is that all the judges and all the competitors have debate experience. We want to change the way that people evaluate and approach the debate space. So many of the judges are coaches or competitors themselves. I'm sorry, I don't know, I don't have time. These are the people who dictate how teams operate, and every single judge, every single competitor is an educator. Voting for us, getting us to more rounds means that we reach more people. And like just for some solvency, like this is like actually working. Like we ran this against like Dougherty Valley last round. I like probably like told you guys about it, and like they came up to us and asked for our pronouns, which is probably like the greatest victory that we've had today and like yesterday. Like people are actually changing their behavior to make it more accessible, and like that's absolutely fantastic, and that's why you have to be voting for the negation, because it's actually working and making it better. Now on to their arguments. Basically, like both of their advantages super link into like this like criticism of debate norms, because literally they say like there are 3 separate ways to get to World War III, when first of all, this isn't even nuclear technology. Like the hypersonic missiles, like we also did some research on it during prep, and although like it could possibly like be connected to like nuclear technology, like they haven't proven like how that would actually happen, because they're purely for like non-nuclear tech right now. So unless they can prove that like that technology is like on the brink or whatever. So basically like they link straight into the project, and like it doesn't even make any sense that it would become nuclear. So for those reasons you must vote no.
Somebody have a red pen?
Yeah.
I gave my pen to David, so he doesn't give it back.
I appreciate it.
It's really red. It's really hot. It feels really hot. One second, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm trying to take off my hat.
Any water on them?
Yeah.
It's just the case and
Case first?
yeah. I think I'll go top down. But kind of.
Wait, sorry, did you say T? Did you say T after
No,
that?
I said case and
Okay.
It's the first advantage that missiles are not developed right now in the EU, which means that they're not able to use other types of technologies like Russia and things like China. This means that there's a high probability that Russia will actually go to war and start attacking. We've already seen this. They've already been attacking neighboring countries and invading into their territories, which means that there's a real threat that they might do this to the EU. A lot of their arguments are predicated off the fact that we're not true, but as long as we justify our wants and justify why our impacts are at least somewhat probable, then you should give us a no link to most of their truth arguments. Because as long as we prove that the impacts are legitimately going to happen, then it's sufficient enough to be that you should vote affirmative. I'll get to it. And it's a threat multiplier because it means that other countries will track and escalate because there's things like NATO and other alliances, which means that once one country comes under attack, other alliances will start attacking each other and leads to nuclear war. Even if you buy their argument about how it's not nuclear technology, at first it escalates because they'll start attacking each other to the point in which they do have nuclear warheads. Extend the argument that countries like China and US have already been developing their warheads, which means that they have the possibility of striking into a nuclear war after these other missiles have happened. But extend the argument that he said when they asked the POI, they could just attach nuclear missile heads and other capabilities on them. The hypersonic missile is just the technology used to carry it and not necessarily what it's sort of composed of, which means that it does have nuclear capabilities. And extend the argument that nuclear holocaust is one of the worst impacts. Nuclear attacks are where it kills millions of people and also leads to things like nuclear fallout and nuclear winter, which means that it kills a lot of the food supply that happens and worsens marginalization between the poor countries because poor people, because it means that they have less access to resources, which means that it becomes harder for them to thrive. But it also leads to extinction since the majority of the people will die as a result of this. And the second advantage was also conceded in both parts that North Korea and both Iran both have alliances with different countries that are supplying them with these weapons. And if they get these weapons, then it'll be unstoppable. But you need someone to deter them. Extend the solvency argument that deterrence will happen between the United States because they're one of the strongest countries, which means that they would deter the other countries away from doing it because they know that if a war would actually happen, then they'd lose, which means they've considered most of their arguments. The only argument they have is the nuclear heading one about how it's not nuclear, but the argument is that, okay. Yeah, what's your question?
Did I raise my hand?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. With my question was like, okay, so the reason that Russia invaded Crimea is because they thought it was a part of Russia. So why would they what historical advantage do they have to invade?
That just shows that they're militaristic right now. Like the fact that they're trying to invade to gain territories.
That they thought was a part of Russia. So how does that extend to the EU?
That was just the casus belli that they kind of fabricated. That was just like the reason they gave to yes, there's an invasion. In terms of international recognition of who owned the territory, basically every country on Earth had recognized that Crimea belonged to Ukraine. Yeah. And also they also invaded the Republic of Georgia and supplied arms to rebels in the Donetsk region of Ukraine, which are separate entirely from that.
Okay. First, where the Afghans critique otherwise includes all 7 minutes of AC offense. Also, it's key for because they can come with an infinite criticisms of the affirmative, which means that we should be able to weigh the AF in order to beat them. Now, there are valid arguments. First, the role of the valid argument. This doesn't actually make any sense because the ballot is just a way that you submit, who you decide to win. There's no specific role that you should assign to the ballot. But second is our role of the ballot. If you think it's true, is that you should vote for the team that does the better debating. Their interpretation is their role of the ballot is bad because it means that you shut out or ignore any single discussion that is not related to things or that isn't related to the norms inside of debate, which means it shuts out all discussion about things like politics and things about what's happening in the status quo, which is bad and something that we should be discussing about. They say that norms are too far. They've never justified why these norms have gone too far or what norms have gone too far. Things like speech times are good norms. Things like defining the topic is a good norm because it's a stable stasis for the ways that we should discuss the topic, which means most of their arguments don't make any sense. They say ballots give me a second. They say the ballots presupposed fiat. No, this argument does not make any sense because the ballot is justified once we justify fiat, which means their arguments about ballots presupposing fiat don't actually make any sense. The project first argument is as long as we're consistent with this project in some sort of way or dealing that most of the project arguments don't actually make any sense. And the negative is not a prior question because they just talk about that question but not discuss what happens once we discuss that question. Once you justify that norms have been deconstructed in debate, what do you do after that? There's no purpose. Once you've decided that norms have been deconstructed, or that good norms or that bad norms have been that there's been bad norms are decreasing, then there's no justification for what you do after that, which means that the way that which they frame debate is one of which is just this project for doing something good, but there's nothing there's nothing about it after that. There's nothing about the topic, which is bad. They say net benefits distances you from the world. No, you can always talk about specific things that affect your identity group or affect your country. There's specific things that you can do in order to justify. It doesn't distance you from the world. If anything, you learn more about the world and learn more about politics, which means it doesn't distance you in the first place. All their truth arguments do not actually make sense as long as you prove that there's a slight chance nuclear war will happen, or a slight chance that war will happen. Then most of their truth-linked arguments you should evaluate on the next argument about misgendering people, or I don't really know what it's called, but I'm just gonna go down. Okay. The race argument first. Even if you're colored, even if you're not white, you can still engage in debate. The fact that me and Brandon engage in debate means that most of their offense is not unique. Also, they called slow their argument. One of the justifications was spreading. They could just call slow if they wanted us to call. If they just wanted us to go slow because they were it excludes minorities. But first, if we were colored people and we spread, then it's not something intrinsic to white people. That means that it's not something that is used as justification for racism. The formal attire argument. You don't have to wear formal attire. That's just some normal debate, but it doesn't mean that anyone actually does it. If anything, people with clout just always walk around wearing random t-shirts, like the Mitch Wife t-shirt or something. That doesn't justify anything. Yeah.
Okay, so the argument was that people with clout use it, and people who don't have clout can't actually have credibility in that same outfit.
People without clout can't use it. It's that people with clout are an example.
For example, we have zero clout. He's wearing Adidas.
Yeah, and he's wearing a Michigan Wife shirt.
Zero clout, and you broke it. Then, yeah, but okay.
Okay. There are two arguments. First, there are only arguments that nuclear war is not going to happen. They haven't cited any justification or reason as to why this wasn't happening. Which we disagree. It's skeptical of our arguments. Our argument is that nuclear warheads can be attached to things like hypersonic missiles, which means there's a very real possibility. Things like mutually assured destruction are not true. That was in the solvency argument. They've already conceded it's possible for a war to actually break out and happen because countries have always have allies with each other, and wars have already happened. Things like historically wars have proven, and recently wars have proven that countries are willing to invade each other. Like things like Russia, China is willing to supply weapons to countries that haven't necessarily been known for doing good things, like North Korea, which proves that most of their arguments do not make any sense because there's a real possibility that war could actually happen. They say we fabricated evidence. No, we didn't. We cited our sources, which means that fight backs from most of their fabrication of evidence argument because the fact that we cited their sources, the fact that we justified what our sources were, and the logical chain behind it, they could ask any questions about it. Means that it's not a fabrication of evidence, and if it was so fabricated, you could obviously catch it, or you could fabricate evidence in response. Probably so trash, but either way, just means that it is possible for you to do it. And then the win-loss argument, we'll just go for the fact that debate is getting the reason that we are here is that. The fact that we are here to win, the fact that there's judges, and the fact that there's teams in prep and different strategies and continuing arguments and going for arguments that means that debate is essentially a game and a competition. There's competitive merit to it. It's not a product. It does not commit us to any single system of ethics, but rather it's a chance for us to learn about politics and engage in specific systems of debate that allow us to challenge on a clash system. That means that there's competitive merits to it that allows us to debate against it. It is not just a project for it's not just a project for fighting against structural violence. It's also key for education because debating things like politics are important. Their interpretation and rule of law do not justify you debating anything real world, but those things are good things that we should be debating. That means that you could just turn most of the education arguments. The affirmative is better for education. They're just talking about what should happen within debate, but our interpretation and what we are debating is things that are happening in the status quo, which are good things. There are arguments that we cannot deconstruct norms, but no, you should turn this argument because the fact that we learn about the state, the way the state functions, and about the ways in which the state can interact means that we can deconstruct norms because once we know what the state is doing, then we are able to know better and play like things like the devil's advocate, where we can just engage with the state to deconstruct things like norms, which means that if you think that norm building is something that we should deconstruct norms even better, then the affirmative is also a good enough model for doing it. Their value to life arguments do not actually make any sense. If value to life is being harmed, if value to life is being harmed inside of the debate space, then that is illogical because you should just engage with the specific types of things the affirmative is doing because it's a good thing. The alternative first permutation, we ask for things like preferred gender bonds before the speech, which proves that you can just defend things like politics and then also do things which are good norms in debate, and also they don't actually need the ballot. The fact that they've already broadcasted this rapping to other people will be able to see.
I don't know.
I thought you like switch off.
I have like another. I might have like a.
No,
I appreciate it. So I'm gonna go the K in order, then finish case in order, and then sort of go through the okay. Where do you want me to put the overview? You can just. It's going to be mostly framework and stuff about yacht and education. So you can just throw that on the framework, on the NEG framework. Okay. Is everyone ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, the first mistake the affirmative team makes is that they say that the ballot is just about who wins or loses. That it's just about who goes to the next round. It is so much more than that. We in this round are presenting narratives. We are presenting stories, and we are presenting stuff that we want other people to believe. This is not just about who wins or loses. This is endorsing and legitimizing narratives. Look to the 3 roles of the judge that my partner brought up in his speech. You can have that. Subpoint A of the role of the judge is to incentivize running similar positions. That is what the ballot does. It tells people to run similar positions that affect positive change. Subpoint B is it sends us further into outrounds, giving us a greater audience and a greater attention for our narrative. Subpoint C is that it legitimizes and endorses that narrative. Extend all 3 of these points through. They do not respond to anything. The ballot is so much more than just who wins or loses. And that is the fundamental mistake they make, and that is why they link directly into RK. Because they believe debate is just a game for advancement and getting trophies. But they don't realize that what they are saying actually impacts people. And the fact that they play into these norms actually affects people in the debate community and beyond. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Okay, so now, on to the next part, the counter role of the ballot. They say, vote for whoever does the best debating. Okay, this again links directly into it. That is the exact question that we are the prior question to. You have to answer the NEG rule of the ballot first. You have to dismantle the harmful debate norms, because without doing that, we are not all on a level playing field. How can you, as the judges, evaluate who is doing the better debating if we all start from different places? If there are excluded groups that are not allowed to debate as well, or have the same ability, or have the same resources, how can you do that? Our advocacy is clearly a prior question, and that is exactly why. Okay, so they talk about how the project doesn't come first because talking about politics is good. Okay, back again. This is before all of that. This is a discussion that affects every single debate round. I agree, talking about politics is good. I want to be a politician. I want to learn about these things. But how can we talk about it when we have such a flawed space, and we have such a flawed way of actually learning about this information? Making sure everyone is included, making sure everyone feels safe in this space is much more important than what actually happens within the debate round. Okay, and then also they talk about how talking about topics and staying on the resolution is good because it provides a stable stasis. Once again, not everyone has that stable stasis. Not everyone can just disassociate with their identity and talk about fiat and other people's identities. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone has that privilege, and that's exactly why we are running this project, because we want to make a stable stasis for everyone. Yeah.
Also, they said we're shutting up the status quo and their narrative, but that's less important than the actual people.
Yeah, exactly. They say we're shutting out the status quo. But look, when we're talking about pre-fiat impacts and talking about politics and real policy making and activism, we are the activism. We are the policy making. This is personal policy making, something that you can truly make an impact upon. When we give you that alternative card, we want you to actually do those things. It's not some fiated alternative. It's not saying burn down debate. It's saying this is something that you can make an impact on, and that is why our advocacy is more important. Okay, so now onto the argument about how not discussing what happens after the AFF is a big problem. Okay, here's what happens after the AFF. Once we have broken down harmful debate norms, then we can continue debating about case. That is important. I like case debate, but the problem is there are fundamental questions and flaws in debate that we must answer before we do those things. Additionally, they talk about how fiat is good because it allows you to learn more about the world. What it does is it allows you to assume things about parts of the world and people in the world that you know nothing about. When they're talking about people in North Korea, people around the world who are dying through their weapons, when they're talking about Crimea, when they're talking about Ukraine, they don't know how these people feel. They don't know about these people's identities and experiences. What we are talking about is real. These are experiences that we have had. These are experiences that people on our team have had. These are experiences of other debaters that we have met and talked to about this stuff. This is real world. Okay, so now on to the links about exclusion. They're talking about how people of color can still engage in debate. Absolutely, people of color can absolutely engage in debate. This is not like a complete literal exclusion. What it means is that in general, as we have seen in our experience through integrating people of color from the Urban Debate League into our debate team, we've seen that they saw jargon as a barrier. They had the exact same ability to debate, the exact same research skills, but they saw all this technical jargon as a barrier to actually allowing to debate in this round.
And with the radio lab, part about how we can pushing people into debate, they're still facing the same challenges. It's why we need to talk about it.
Yes, exactly. And the radio lab card, that's evidence saying that actually that previous efforts that aren't deconstructing the system that we currently have and pushing excluded groups into the current system have not worked. So we need to break down the system. Okay, again, so now onto the truth part. They talk about how nuclear war is going to happen, how there's a real possibility of nuclear war. Okay, first of all, they link completely into this. Everything that they talk about, like my partner said, is this will happen, this will become nuclear war. A literal quote is nuclear holocaust, the bombs blowing up across the earth. Does that sound realistic? Does that sound nuanced? Does that sound like they really believe what they're talking about? They're just spewing out statements. And as my partner talked about, from Harry Frankfurt's on bullshit, they don't care whether they're true or false. They're throwing out scenarios like they themselves basically said. They're throwing out scenarios, hoping we drop it, hoping it gets through, and hoping that just gets conceded, and that way they win the debate round. That is not a norm that we should be looking for, because that norm dilutes truth, and it dilutes the value of the debate round. Okay, also they talk about how they did not fabricate evidence necessarily. Sure, I agree that maybe they did not fabricate evidence. But the fact is that fabrication of evidence and bending the truth happens a lot in debate. Just because they are not doing it does not mean it's not a problem. And the fact that we are advocating for stopping that norm and stopping that trend is still a reason to vote AFF. Yeah, it's still a reason to vote NEG, even if the AFF is not doing it. Okay, now on to debate. Okay, again, they link completely into it. They say debate is a game and a competition to learn about politics. Once again, certain people have the privilege to think about debate as a game, when the policy talk and the policy discussion does not really affect them. But there are people, as we've seen through the trans lifeline card, as we have seen through all the cards that we've talked about how this impacts excluded groups, it is not in a vacuum. This is not just a competition about winning and losing. This is not just about using strategies and tactics. Do you think that the billions of people that you said are going to die in nuclear holocaust is just a strategy to win? That is exactly the problem that we are trying to counter. This is dehumanization at its finest. Okay, now when they talk about we have to engage with the state and talk about the way the state functions. Okay, first of all, this is not engaging with the state. Like, look at the actual pre-fiat education impact. We're all going to go home, and in a week we're going to forget about a hypersonic missile system. And none of us are, there's a very low likely probability that any of us are ever going to be in a position of power to actually affect change in the Pentagon or in the military anywhere that's going to be talking about these missile systems. However, what we do have agency over is our own lives and our own advocacy within the debate space. Now, let's talk about why this all solves. Go back to every single round of this tournament. In the first round, we had a group that talked about how they actually added pronouns to Tabroom after the round. They talked about how they were going to volunteer at a local school to help excluded groups. In the second round, they were newer debaters, and we taught them about harmful debate norms, and they came away more knowledgeable. In the third round, we helped with this dangerous rhetoric. Now I want to talk about the perm. So, first of all, just because the fact that they permed and the fact that they took our solvency and came up to us and did it is showing exactly why you should vote for us, because we are the ones making a difference. The fact that they heard it from their teammates when we were running and then took it upon themselves to come up and ask us, that shows that it works, that shows that it spreads. Additionally, you can still vote for us because you still have to spread it to other places. And by advocating for the perm, you are basically rejecting this and rejecting spreading it and rejecting running this in debate rounds. Thank you.
I'm going to basically just go over the new voters, synthesizing a lot of stuff and why you should vote.
So do you want this on like a motion?
I mean, it'll go from framework to alt solvency to stuff they said on the links. So if you want to put it consolidated on one sheet, then you can put it. You can also just put it.
Cool.
Okay. Is everyone ready? So to start my time now. The first reason why you should be voting for the negation is because the role of the ballot and the role of the judge are in our favor. First, with the role of the ballot. First of all, they said there's no role of the ballot, and it's basically, it's just whoever wins and loses. But we have already disproven with the role of the judge on incentivizing other people to do these positions, getting us further into outrounds for larger audience and impact, and legitimizing the narrative, possibly the most important argument in the round, legitimizing the narrative as the judge is truly why you should be voting for the negation and why there was a role of the ballot. As my partner already said, our criticism of these debate norms is a prior question in order to vote for the team that does the better debating, because if people aren't sitting on an equal playing field, then how the hell are you possibly going to say this person's a better debater, this person's a worse debater? You would have to factor in so many factors that you shouldn't be in a debate round. It should be objective about the arguments that a person is putting forward, but that is not how debate norms stand right now. Therefore, you must vote for the team that best dismantles harmful debate norms. And the affirmative team actually makes them significantly worse, which I will get into in a second. Also, flow through the fact, the unique fact that in-round discussion is the only way that we can actually get these impacts, because people only care when their ballot is affected. That is proven by the affirmative team because they believe the debate is a game only for the ballot. And that is something that they have said over and over again, and they have admitted and they have embraced. And because of that, you have to vote for the negation, because this is a unique opportunity. NPDI and all of this debate round and every single debate round we have is a unique opportunity to change the norms in the faces of educators. And with that, let's go into our alternative solvency that has come completely. Oh, also, sorry. Before that, let's talk about fiat for a second. So they talk about how these fiat impacts, how we're shutting out the status quo. First of all, the status quo, the status quo, like in the debate space, and like in the debate space very literally, is like something that is very exclusionary and something that they're kind of promoting, because they say that debate is game and flow through like the response that the epistemological difference in debate between truth and like the actual norms of debate is what creates this exclusion and this dilution of truth. Like that was an argument that they never went over. I think it's on the first link under debate truth, and like that epistemological difference is why this exclusion and dilution of truth is happening, and they like acknowledge and they like promote that. So like that's a huge reason why you should be voting for us. Also, like fiat is dangerous. What? Oh.
That's mis- oh yeah. I think what's
That's a literal quote from the.
Yeah, we've been bringing it up. He didn't say epistemology in his second speech, but he was talking about like the difference between like debate and truth. Yeah, so like fiat, like pre-fiat is obviously more important because like there are people in this room that would be like affected by these norms, like including myself. I can't advocate for everybody in this room, but like advocating for myself, like those are solutions that actually are great. As I said, like probably the biggest victory of this tournament is this guy coming up to me and asking what my pronouns are. Like that is an example of how these impacts are actually happening and how we are actually solving this problem. And if you're not going to evaluate like those real world impacts first, like I don't really know what to tell you. So now on to like the alternative to solvency. They completely dropped the difference between like the unique opportunity that NPDI like has. Like the difference between this tournament and others is like you three judges, like everybody in this room has debate experience, and they like we have spectators in this room that can hear and like evaluate these real world impacts and like actually spread them to different rounds. Like every single person in this round is an educator, and that is purely why you should be voting for the negation, because all our solvency hinges on your ballot. Like basically, like although we like lost a round in prelims, like the judge literally said like we would have given you the double win because I don't want to delegitimize what you're saying because it's important. Like this is something that has made an actual impact on people in the debate round, and if that wasn't true, then they wouldn't have asked us for our pronouns. And like the last argument is like they completely link in like kind of all of the worst ways. Like they just admit that like debate is a game only to win and only to lose. Like that's literally like our entire case, saying that that justifies exclusion of transgender people, non-binary people, lower income people of color, people who and like basically like you should be voting against the affirmative like just for that rhetoric alone, because we have like proven that there's like an ethical disadvantage to voting for the affirmative, even if you don't believe like in like all these links and stuff. So for those reasons, we like must ethically and like on the flow vote for the negation.
I'm gonna go basically just an overview on this moment. I'm just going to take. Anyone not ready?
There's really very little work we have to do on the case law because they essentially drop all of our analysis on the case law and to go further critique. Their only response that they could potentially went on is saying that hypersonic missile gliders and stuff like that aren't nuclear technology, but they drop Anurag's and mine analysis where we say that you can just stick a nuclear missile warhead onto the missile. The missile is not the part that explodes the warhead, which means that it can go. It can use a nuclear weapon even if it's not a nuclear weapon. That's not how escalation works. Even if it's just a missile exploding and killing tens of thousands of civilians at one time, that probably goes nuclear. You can extend all of our apex scenarios because they're really specifically a lot of analysis on this. It could be really key on capable because they're so not truthful, but we can not a lot of analysis. You can't just buy the fact that you can't just buy the fact the claim that we're not truthful without the negative doing any analysis on why we're not truthful. That's how a debate works. You probably remember my analysis where I said that I isolate three very very likely possible scenarios where a nuclear hypersonic missile could be used to break out in a war versus the EU versus Russia. This is a very real conflict which is already sparked. There's already small arms fire happening in the eastern border of Ukraine with Russia right now. That's already happening right now. Russia just fought a war with Georgia not even 10 years ago. That's a war that just happened right now. Somebody just decides to get called in. That goes to global and nuclear. North Korea has threatening America with nuclear weapons and vice versa. These are all very real threats happening right now. And they're very salient threats that they can't just say are unlikely to say that the threat that nuclear war is unlikely just because it causes a lot of destruction. That's exactly the same logic that like people to try to appease Nazi Germany so that war couldn't break out again. But that's not how any of this works. The nuclear holocaust is the biggest impact probably.
The argument that like your reasoning is the same as those who like broke out of Nazi or like who were or like our reasoning that like this war couldn't happen is the same as like people who didn't believe Nazi Germany could happen is like completely new analysis and you don't have time to respond to it.
Okay, I'm just using that as an example to justify like this same analysis, we really go out of question.
Comparing us to people in Nazi Germany is a little bit of new analysis.
And like of the problem.
And you can, since there's no contestation of impacts on the affirmative, you can away you're going to probably flow through all of our section. That's really important to critique because they drop on our analysis. We say you should be weighing the impacts of the affirmative versus the critique because that's probably there's a huge list of reasons why our debate probably about policy is really good here. They just say that their project is really good because they redefine like debate norms and stuff like that. But they're dropping a lot of really important things on ours, so we can delink also from the critique. We prove that we are truthful. Our in-depth analysis, the fact that it's able to spread at like 300 words per minute for 8 minutes about the different worst scenarios happening using evidence that's archaic 18 evidence that are Marcia's 18 evidence, and also I cited Lieutenant General from the U.S. Army probably means that our troop claims are true. Our claims about the world are true, but we can delink from there. If we're truthful because we've done truthful debating, which means that we're not doing harmful debate norms. We're not like Richard Nixon, who probably used debate to do something to like justify his launch apology to do evil things, and also to the best. Fion is bad because that's close exclusionary, but that doesn't do any real analysis of why this precludes our discussion. Our discussion is useful because it gives us real world truthful analysis on how the institutions work, which is really important because our version of debate is something that actually gives us the skills needed to engage with the state, which is what Anurag said is super key to forming these coalitions and actually enacting change in the real world. They say that there's a lot of reasons that you should look to debate as a place of education, which is why you should value the actual policy debate. The policy in and of itself is the education part, not the simple discussion. Even if you have a really crappy discussion on their side, that's probably means we don't learn anything. We just get disheartened from debating again because we think we're going to hit some people who are reading things big words that we don't understand. And also debate is also it's also not perfectly exclusive, but it's inclusionary. It's not perfect. It doesn't mean it's versus to reject the entire institution. They give examples of some where they're able to include marginalized debaters. Me and Anurag are also included marginalized debaters. My school is 75% Asian. Our entire debate team has a bunch of people that are Asian on the debate team, even though they don't go to camp. They still participate over and that's super rich, which means that debate's probably including people right now. Also, they say that people dressing up is probably really bad. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be clouded in order to dress up. There's people, all sorts of goons from all over the place that are not dressing up the tournament because they can't afford it, which is totally fine because nobody expects you to dress up at a tournament. Also, they say that the negative prior questions, you should, they say the negative prior question, this is a really big issue. It's infinitely aggressive. That's what Anurag's reasoning here is that, my opponent's reasoning here is that you should be voting for the better debating. That's the role of the ballot here because their role of the ballot is infinitely aggressive. They just justify infinite discussions about who we should be including, and at the end they lose out on the actual policy. Now they completely cold to see our analysis. We say that debate is that actual debate should vote for the better debate is probably better because they lock out other forms of discussion. If you vote for them, you're just reifying and incentivizing other people to completely lock out a policy discussion. They lose on the reason that policy debates. They lose out on the reason that policy debates benefit towards analysis on institutions to affect actual change. So for our world, we are also the most real world because we have given in-depth analysis of the truth. You can't just deny people's claims in the real world by saying it doesn't sound likely. You have to actually give an insight into that. That's give plenty of reasons. Also, our analysis state is good again now. They say we're actually because we don't have any nuances in affirmative, but once again, you just send our response. We said 8 minutes to 30 words per minute. How many we have a lot of nuances? Oh yeah, the perm is also a single reason we win. We can do this because they don't prove that the permutation is that the negative is mutual exclusive perm. We did this already. Anurag asking us to probably every they say the perm is breaking one of the verticals, but it's not solvency. It's just minor work firm. They don't prove any sort of mutual exclusive. Making a change isn't competitive with policy making. They can we can redefine norms, and if you really want us to, we will do this for you on the next round. We'll also ban policy. The perm is mutual exclusive. We've already affected in round the change while also debating policy.
You want to do a handshake?
Well, you all have to do
Oh.
I find it really stuff.